Detours. Brought to you by Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. As a 6-time Paralympian, a 2-time bronze medalist, and a National Wheelchair Basketball Hall of Famer, Trooper Johnson has made his mark as one of the best to play the game. Now, his dedication and commitment to excellence can be seen both as a coach and a mentor globally. Welcome, Trooper.
How are you doing, Bob? Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, really good to catch up with you. I noticed for the past 3 years, you've had a lot of journey in your life, but for the past 3 years, you've been coaching the South African men's and women's national basketball teams. Man, what an adventure. How did that come about, just for starters?
Well, it was just kind of an odd encounter. I was coaching the U.S. Women's Under-25 team for the World Championship in Thailand in 2019. And as we were out there, South Africa was there for the first time, and they'd brought their team there, and they were kind of pretty nervous about a lot of stuff, and they wanted to figure out if we could scrimmage against them and just kind of use this opportunity for our team to mentor their team a little bit just in the experience aspects of the game. So we got them on the court, and we used kind of joint practice sessions and just started playing a little bit, and then I was invited to go down and run some clinics and some camps down in South Africa later on in 2019. And then once my tenure with the U.S. national team ended after the Tokyo Games, I was invited to go down there and coach and work to help their programs grow. So it was just an amazing experience. It was one of the things that I'll never forget. And I just appreciate the opportunity that I had.
Hey, Trooper, before we get moving forward on this, I saw a name pop up over and over again in a lot of the research I did and the articles I read, a guy by the name of Jerry Smith, and you credit him for bringing you to the program. Evidently, he's the South African director of high performance sports over there. What significance did Jerry have in bringing you into the program, and what significance does he have even more so to the program?
Jerry is just amazing. So he's the person that was running the program in 2019 to take the team down there to Thailand for the competitions. And when I met him down there, he was basically, taking over the high performance component, and it was changing direction on how they were running the program there, and really working on how they were going to develop their outreach efforts to get more athletes involved and really expand the program to make sure that it was growing, at what they considered to be at the potential that they wanted to grow. So, I met Jerry, we kept in contact, and then he's the one that invited me to go down there and start coaching. But Jerry right now, he runs all aspects of the high performance program for South Africa for the men's, women's, U25, U23, all the national team programs. So he's involved in every aspect of the program and making sure that the athletes are engaged and involved, that they're doing, trying to find athletes that are out within all of South Africa, get them involved in the game, get them competing, provide the funding for them, provide the resources. So he is the guy in South Africa.
I'm thinking as you got down there, you had some pretty formidable challenges right away with resources of itself. So finding facilities, modernizing the basketball chairs that the athletes were using, just a ton of different things, just antiquated chairs and facilities. I know I've touched on a couple. Were there more? And were those the significant challenges? Was equipment a big problem?
Equipment is a huge problem down there. So I think when I first got there, like a lot of the chairs were broken, re-welded, just kind of, they had program style chairs. Some of the athletes had their individual chairs, but even the chairs that they had, they weren't really like the chairs that we have in the United States and in Europe. So you couldn't even imagine the number of repair welds and repairs on the chairs, whether it was, the frame or upholstery or equipment, like everything, it was just kind of mashed together. So luckily, we have a great program here called CAF that donates equipment to athletes here. And the program that I was running here, all the athletes that were getting new equipment were donating the chairs, their older chairs, to me to take them down to South Africa to be able to use in that program. So I was able to take almost 10 wheelchairs down there to help, grow their equipment storage, and get, some of their athletes in newer chairs, newer pieces of equipment. As far as the gym goes, they were really fortunate to, a while back, have a guy basically donate a gym specifically for wheelchair sports. So the wheelchair basketball and wheelchair rugby use this one thing called the Mandeville Sports Center, and it's a Mandeville Sports Center for individuals with physical disabilities. And so um, it's a beautiful facility. It's, it's old, it's kinda historic. I mean, it's worn down and they take care of it really well. But I mean, as far as the facility goes, it's like a great gym. It's wonderful to have it. They have, lodging on site for the athletes when they come in. They are able to stay in the back and stay in dorm rooms, and be able to eat on site, and when we have training camps, they're local. So that wasn't one of the concerns that I had. They had pretty much taken care of that. There were times when there were kind of conflicts because the Africa Basketball League has taken a lot of attention up there, and so it's grown. So the able-bodied basketball professional leagues are taking over, and so they would use the facility. And so there were times when we'd be bumped out, and we'd have to find local courts, and rent local courts, which was kind of amazing because you're running around and seeing a little bit more of South Africa, which was awesome. Um, but I think the other things is just, you have a language difference, you have cultural differences, you have all these different barriers that I think, when you really look at it from a coaching perspective, you you look at how you're going to design game plans and how you're going to design practice plans, but then you have to be able to get that information across and get people to understand it, and then have your interpreters there, or have people that are able to help you showcase things on the court in a way that these other people can understand it. And luckily, the athletes, were really patient with me. They were amazing for the most part. I mean, it was a really good experience.
Did you find that the athletes embraced, and the program in general, did they embrace your concepts, and were they eager to learn what it was that you were bringing to the table?
I think it was a really different way of looking at it. Like, I'm a very analytical coach, right? I look at numbers a lot. I look at data a lot when I coach because I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to show improvement and be able to prove that we're improving over time, right? So I do a lot of testing. I do a lot of data collection, and that was one thing that I think that they weren't used to, and so it took a little bit of an adjustment period for them to get used to the fact that everything that we were doing was going to have some form of data collection associated to it, and some form of analysis to where we would break it down afterwards and be able to show, hey, this is what we want, this is what we don't want, and how we're moving forward. And some athletes, like with any program that you have, some athletes are able to adjust to it and move forward and accept it and embrace it. And you always have one or two athletes that they kind of go, man, this isn't for me. I just want to play ball and move on. So, but
Sometimes
it
that
worked out
happens.
great. Yeah, it always happens.
Yeah. So, one of the other things I read was that wheelchair ball in South Africa is helping to promote inclusivity and diversity, and it's helping to, I guess, change the cultural opinions towards disability and what can and can't be done. Well, even more so, what can be done. So, do you feel over your 3-year tenure that you sense that there was a cultural change to a degree?
Well, I think that there definitely was. I mean, I think that what we tried to do with the athletes is make sure that the athletes understood that their responsibility wasn't just on the court, but also to go back in their communities and be representatives of, positive representatives in their community, right? But they have a great sponsor in Sassel, which South Africa, it's one of the oil companies down in South Africa, and they're really good at helping to promote sport throughout South Africa and really helping to engage a lot of people within the disabled community in sport as much as they can. So Sassel, in combination with Wheelchair Basketball South Africa, and just the efforts of some of the amazing athletes, like there were some athletes that were down there that just really took it upon themselves to own that responsibility to make sure that the next generation of athletes had it better than themselves, and also to make sure that using sport within their community helped bring people up, especially people with disabilities, since that is going to be a struggle, especially in South Africa.
We'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Sports and Spokes Magazine. For nearly 50 years, they've produced stories on iconic athletes performing at the top of their game, given generational coverage of sports dating back to the 1970s, and they've shown the way with exciting and timeless magazine cover shots. To stay on top of all the latest news from the world of high performance adaptive sports, go to sportsandspokes.com. Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. So today there was a tournament, and ironically, I mean, so coincidentally, here we are speaking about this, and the U.S. played against South Africa, and it was pretty obvious. I mean, we've got a pretty established program here that goes way back to youth, so it wasn't really close, but it must have been exciting for you to see that. Basically, the fruit of all your labor is coming true at
Exactly.
this point.
I mean, that was a fun game to watch. And there are some things where you look at it and you go, "Oh my gosh, why did they do this or why did they do that?" But at the same time, you're watching and you're going, "Oh my gosh, they're doing so many different things that we had really been working on." So it was a fun game to watch. I think that watching some of these athletes, like you mentioned in the United States, we have so many different opportunities for training here. We have a really well established junior program. So some of these kids come in the NWBA and start playing basketball in the prep division. So they're under 12 years old, starting to play ball and being engaged in that sport. They go through the junior division, graduate, they get on into college, and then they go on to wherever they're going afterwards. But so they've had all this opportunity to engage themselves in sport, and in South Africa, those opportunities really don't exist, right? Like I mentioned, they have equipment issues. They have the leagues that they have. They play competitively and they get around, but it's like the coaching structure in the leagues are not at the same level as we have here, and the engagement and opportunities to train aren't the same as we have here in the United States. So to watch them, there's a slower growth potential and a track for growth and development down there. And to watch them today was really just awesome. I mean, it was great seeing them on the court and playing their hearts out.
Not that I want to get into, how someone ended up in a wheelchair, but I have to imagine that in many ways you might see a little less spinal cord injury. So you're probably raising. I'm going out on a limb and saying you're probably getting a lot of these kids as kids. They're coming up from way down here at 8, 10, 12 years old. So you're not picking them up after a car accident at 20 years old.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I mean, the type of injury or type of disability is a lot different. So you do have a lot more people that had polio or had congenital birth defects or had accidents when they were kids. But still, getting them engaged to the sport is something that's always a struggle. Just because that when they're younger, here in the United States, we have that emphasis of trying to get people with disabilities and try to get them engaged in sport, using that as an opportunity to kind of increase their paths in education. And in South Africa, that just isn't really one of the focuses there. So a lot of times when you're trying to get a new kid involved in sport, there's a little bit more of a struggle and a little bit more of kind of a setback there.
What is it that would take that program to the next level? Is it resources? Is it money? Is it more coaching? If South Africa wanted to become a true qualified Paralympic team where they could face up against some of the bigger teams on the circuit, GB, USA, so on, China, Netherlands, what would they have to do? What would it take?
Right now it's going to be just a really long road for that. The goal that we had, especially on the men's side, was to really qualify for the World Championships. I think when you really look at how they revised the qualification standards for the Paralympic Games, it it really hurt, you know, the continent of Africa, right? So, um, the fact that there's only 8 teams that are gonna be competing in the Paralympics now, and then they have to go through the repetage and the qualifying tournaments that to only the top 8 teams in the world are getting in. You don't have that zone representation like you used to have in the past, which is really kind of a sad thing because excuse me, when I grew up, like the Olympic motto was, unite the world through sport. And it was everything was unite the world through sport. And so that was one of the reasons that they had like zonal qualifications and you had zone representation. So every continent was going to have an opportunity to be represented. And so now you have such strong teams, especially in Europe, and you have, the United States and Canada, and you have the Asian countries and stuff. But so they kind of knock that opportunity for the African countries to qualify out of the mix here, right? And so for South Africa right now, I think that what we looked at, we said they were probably ranked number 22 in the world, after the last Worlds or after the last Paralympics. And obviously when you're going down below anything below 12, you're kind of guessing at it where it is. But to go from 22nd up to number 8 to qualify, that's a huge jump, right? But to go from 22nd up to 16 to get into the world championships, that you have potential there. And so that was it. We wanted to have kind of, baby steps in how we grow. We wanted to have a goal in what we were trying to achieve over a short period of time. And then once we got into that position, start working our way up a little bit further. But it is, just the qualification standards right now really hurt all the countries in Africa.
I completely understand. Trooper, as you reflect back on your 3-year tenure over there, can you isolate a moment or an event or something that happened that maybe really surprised you or took you off guard, or maybe you just something really special that happened while you were over there?
I think it's really odd. You look at how initially there were people, on the team that because of cultural differences, because of language barriers, because of anything, that you always wondered if they were understanding you and if they were really buying into the program, right? And I think that, I finished up my tenure there on December 31st, and now, I don't work there anymore, but I still get these messages from the players, and I still get, the communication keeps going on, and I still get all these things from the players where you really realize that you had this connection with them, and it just continues beyond basketball. I think they were so willing to share, their culture and their country with me. It was amazing to see that and embrace that. I think that the experience changed me in the fact that all of a sudden you are really embracing an entirely different culture of people, an entirely different mindset of individuals, and just to kind of segue off of this, like we're having this one meeting, and I'm talking about defense, and I'm saying, hey, you guys, like when you're defending on this side, like we have this team meeting, and I'm talking to the players, and I said, and it was because they were kind of being a little lax on defense, and I'm like, when you're defending something, like you have to act like somebody's coming in and trying to take your food from you. Like I want you to deny them, like they are coming in trying to take your food, and you are not going to let them do that. And all of a sudden I had these strange looks at me, and I kind of was looking around, and I'm like thinking, what, did I say something wrong? So I asked one of the guys, what's going on? And one of the players is like, Coach, in our culture, if somebody's hungry, we share our food. And I thought, well, okay, let's figure something else out then, right? But it was just so innocent in the way it was said, so direct and deliberate, and then you realize that like, uh, we'd have training sessions, and I'd go out and I'd get candy bars for the players and stuff like that, and I'd have them, okay, if you hit this shot or if you do something like that. Like there was this one guy that, man, he'd do extra work, he'd do anything, because I mean they just really don't have a lot of opportunity to embrace like junk food and like crap, right? Like we do. So I get candy bars, and he'd do whatever I'd ask him to do. So I'd give him the candy bar, and then you'd see him go over, and he'd have this tiny, it wasn't a big candy bar, it was a tiny candy bar, but he'd go over and he'd call the whole team over, and they would break it up into pieces, and he'd share it with everybody that was there, right? And you just realize that it's not just something that they said; that is what they believe, right? And so it just really opened your eyes to just, I mean, they were wonderful people. I mean, it was an amazing experience. It's something I'll cherish forever. Um, and I loved it.
Trooper, you're a great athlete. You're a great mentor. Thanks so much for sharing this insight today, because I think we learned a lot about a program we would have never known about otherwise. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Bob.